Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined on this Thursday morning by Pat Fitzmaurice and by Andrew Erickson. Fellas, we are talking some starts. We are talking some sits. We are talking some, are we starting or sitting these waiver wire guys? We are planting our flags on some players. It is our Thursday show. Quick reminder for everyone that all of our weekly consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. Guys, let's dive right in, and we're going to start, as we always do, with those waiver wire ads, the most popular guys of the week, the guys at the top of our waiver wire rankings. And are we actually starting them right away, or are these just players that we wanted to stash, that we wanted to have for the long term? Fitz, I'll start with you. Ray Davis is the first name here. Obviously, to a significant degree, his value is dependent on the health of James Cook, but he looked so good that even if Cook is playing, I wonder if there's any consideration for Ray Davis. Are you starting or sitting Davis in week 7?
Probably sitting him if indeed we do see the return of James Cook from his toe injury. And Cook did get in a limited practice on Wednesday, so it looks like he probably will be back. As good as Ray Davis was on Monday night, he was really good. I mean, he showed the same things that got me kind of excited about him as a prospect coming out of college. But like, James Cook is really good. He's not going to be cast aside completely. So I do think Davis is going to have some sort of complementary role going forward, but he is not going to displace James Cook. And the matchup really isn't that easy. The Bills play the Titans, who rank 6th in DVOA against the run and have allowed the 10th fewest points to running back. So right now I have Cook, RB21, and Davis, RB38.
Erickson, what do you think? Is Ray Davis somebody you're considering starting here?
No, not for me, for all the same reasons that Fitz kind of laid out. I mean, his ECR is RB39. I have him RB38 alongside with Fitz. So as exciting as he was to watch and play, you have to keep in mind that that was in a game against a really bad Jets run defense, where in the first drive, you could tell, oh man, Ray Davis is going to have a monster game because they could not tackle him whatsoever. And the Bills fed into that. So I know that sometimes you get caught up in them. Well, they can't possibly use him less. And then they do. Right? We've seen this with Tank Bigsby at times this year when he's looked really explosive, and then they just go back to the other guy when he's healthy. So again, it's a different offense, but yeah, it's a tougher matchup, and it really would take James Cook being totally ruled out. Just 2 weeks ago against the Houston Texans, Ray Davis played 2 snaps on offense. So do I expect him to play that little of a role? No, especially with Cook potentially not back to his full workload. But like Fitz said, James Cook is still really good. He's not lost his job because he was injured. He's been really good all year long. So I think Ray Davis is going to be a sit for me as well.
And just for clarity, I assume you guys would agree based on what we saw, like in any event where James Cook is not playing, whether it's this week or another week, Ray Davis is then, definitely a start.
Correct.
Yeah. It is weird that Ty Johnson was sort of playing ahead of him in that game where Ray Davis had 2 snaps, and then like Monday night, it was all Ray Davis and Ty Johnson was just a ghost. So as well he should be with the way Ray Davis played.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about a couple of receivers here in this section as well. JuJu Smith-Schuster, back from the dead, possibly. Obviously, the Chiefs had a bye this most recent week in week 6. So this is kind of still looking backwards to week 5. But people were picking him up after what we saw. It was 7 catches, 130 yards in that game for the Chiefs in week 5. So here, as we go into week 7, coming off the bye, maybe we see more Xavier Worthy involved in the offense, or maybe Smith-Schuster just is the number one guy besides Travis Kelce. I'm really more, curious to see how this plays out here in week 7 than I have, a strong opinion and strong conviction on what I think will happen. Erickson, do you feel strongly about what you expect to happen?
No, I do not feel strongly about JuJu Smith-Schuster. I think that he's an okay start as a flex wide receiver 3 play, but I'm okay keeping him on my bench if I want to see him repeated. I want to see the consistency for JuJu Smith-Schuster to say that, okay, it wasn't a flash in the pan for him in this particular matchup in week 5. I do expect more from Xavier Worthy coming out of the bye week. We see this all the time. Rookies get more involved. How do you beat the 49ers? Through the slot. And Xavier Worthy actually played more slot snaps than JuJu did in week 5. You can beat them with big plays over the top with Worthy's speed. So I'm cool even if Smith-Schuster has another solid game, is involved a lot, then I feel good about him rest of the season. And then I feel confident playing him in week 8. But for week 7, again, I think he's in that wide receiver 3 range. But where I have him in my rankings, there's a bunch of guys I do slightly prefer over JuJu. So I'm leaning towards sitting him, but I do think that there is a upside case for him as a wide receiver 3.
Fitz, what are you doing with JuJu this week?
Oh, I'm starting him wide receiver 25. Here's the thing, Erickson. It's not just a one-game sample size with Juju. 2 years ago, he had 78 catches and 933 yards for the Chiefs, basically playing this Rashee Rice role. And look, he's 75% of Rashee Rice. Like, Rashee Rice was a major upgrade over Juju for the Chiefs last year, but now Juju is right back in that role as the primary short area receiver for the Chiefs. And that has proven to be a valuable role. And even though I don't think Juju has the same sort of juice that Rashee Rice had, like, I think he's going to see the same sort of target counts or close to what we saw with Rashee Rice. So I think it's a really valuable role, and Juju played it well last time we saw him. So I'm ready to roll him out, man. I think he's a high-end wide receiver 3 this week.
Erickson, if you see Juju have another big game this week, how significantly will you be moving him up in your weekly rankings going forward? Like, once you see it again?
Well, probably where Fitz has him, right? Yeah. Again, it was till 2 years ago, and Juju was probably, I mean, I know he's still a younger player, but the thing that's kind of hurt him the most is his knee injuries that he's been dealing with. Maybe he's healthy right now, and maybe that's why he was able to play better. But, I mean, this guy got cut from the Patriots, right? I mean, the Patriots are like, they need a receiver more than anybody, and he couldn't make that team. So maybe that's just because the Patriots don't know what they're doing. But I don't know. I'm still a little skeptical, but Fitz lays out a good point that we have seen Juju have success in this offense. But even going back to that year, it was a hot start for Juju, and then he kind of fell off in the second half of the season. So maybe it's another hot start for Juju, and maybe we're looking at Juju as hey, he's had 3 or 4 great weeks. Let's sell high. Maybe a little bit teaser for the trade show for next week.
Patriots had to make room for Kendrick Bourne, man.
I mean, got to get Kayshon Boutte on the field, man.
Well, speaking of the Patriots, that's the other name I wanted to bring up from the waiver wires this week. DeMario Douglas, 6 catches on 9 targets, 92 yards, and a touchdown in Drake May's first start. Fitz, is Pop Douglas somebody that you're interested in starting this week?
I'm not quite as smitten with Douglas as everyone else seems to be. I mean, yeah, he is the best of a very bad group of receivers in New England, and maybe that means he keeps getting 9 targets every week. There is some low-level fantasy value to that, but Douglas just played his 20th NFL game and scored his first touchdown. So there is not a lot of touchdown potential here. There's not a lot of big play potential here. And he is tied to a rookie quarterback who, as big a Drake May fan as I am, it's not always going to be pretty in the passing game with Drake May. So there are going to be some rough games. I think DeMario Douglas is still like a wide receiver 4. I think I've got him wide receiver 41 or 42 this week.
If he is the guy in the offense, and you take that with a grain of salt given the state of the offense and the state of the receiving core, but if he is the guy, I kind of feel like Drake May is talented enough that like he doesn't need to be a very good passer for an entire game to at least get enough good passes Douglas's way to take advantage if Douglas is the guy getting the targets. And like Drake May is the most talented quarterback Douglas has played with in the NFL, certainly. So even if it's a roller coaster rookie season for May, just in terms of his on-field performance, I think the ups, if they're going to Pop Douglas, will be valuable. Like, I mean, because I'm really high on Drake May. Like, even as a rookie, I think the highs are going to be pretty high, even if the lows will also be fairly low. So I am definitely excited about Douglas. Erickson, as a Patriots fan, what do you expect?
See, I like Douglas more than Juju. So I'm on the opposite side here with Fitz, where he's playing the Jaguars. This is one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. We saw Drake May throw 3 touchdowns last week in a much tougher matchup. The Texans have the #1 pass rush in the NFL. Jacksonville ranks 30th. So Drake May, more time to throw. I love this matchup for DeMario Douglas. Again, 9 targets in 3 of his 4 games this year. He has a 26% target share in the last 4 games, and some of those games are with Jacoby Brissett. Drake May said this week, can't guard this guy in a phone booth, man. He just gets open. So I think that he's going to get fed in this particular matchup. I feel more confident about him as the quote-unquote #1 established target leader in this offense. Again, Patriots offense usually not that exciting, but they showed out last week with Drake May in his first start in a much tougher matchup, and now they get the softest matchup you could ask for. I mean, Caleb Williams threw 4 touchdowns last week. Again, behind a not-so-great offensive line. He was running around, picking up yards with his legs, moving the ball. So Jacksonville is reeling right now, and I want to start as many pieces in the passing game as I can against them, which sounds very weird and odd, but Douglas was good last year as a rookie. Again, he didn't score the touchdowns, but hey, when you get enough catches and yards, eventually the touchdowns start to come. So I'm going to roll with Douglas here.
Erickson, Douglas is wide receiver 35 in ECR. Yeah, and that probably feels, I mean, I guess to me it feels a touch low given that, like, if he's going to get 9 targets in this game again, given the matchup and with Drake May, like, I would expect him to finish higher than, very low end wide receiver 3. Having said that, there's not a ton of names ahead of him that I think, I would want to move down below him. So I guess by that stance, it's a justifiable ranking. But again, I do think, like, if he's getting the targets in this matchup with this new quarterback, like, I think that's enough for him to outperform this spot.
I mean, it does come down to if he scores, right? So in the 2 games where he had 9 targets and didn't score, he was wide receiver 41 and wide receiver 32. So I think that worst case scenario, he's probably going to be wide receiver 3, which is kind of where he's ranked. If he finds the end zone, which Fitz, again, who probably has a better chance of scoring a touchdown, it's probably Smith-Schuster because he has Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback. So I'll admit that the ceiling play might be with JuJu just because he could score multiple touchdowns, or maybe Douglas will only get 1. But I think Douglas has the safer floor, whereas, JuJu, what do you know? It was just a 1-week sample with him from last week. The matchup really called for it, and they're really featuring Travis Kelce more. They're running the ball. They're using more of Xavier Worthy, etc. So, yeah.
Fitz, let's move to the next segment here. Who are you planting your flag on in week 7?
Ty Chandler. So Aaron Jones' injury, it turns out, is a hamstring and not a hip. His status is now being described as week to week rather than day to day. So pretty unlikely Aaron Jones plays this week. I think Ty Chandler is going to be the main man for the Vikings against the Lions. The Vikings did just trade for Cam Akers, but hard to see him playing a significant role. I think it's pretty clear that the matchup with Detroit, not like an easy one, but it's a little easier without Aiden Hutchinson. And that was just a horrible blow for the Lions defense. I think it's going to be easier to move the ball on the Lions now. They've been, like their defense had kind of been stepping up this year and matching, coming close to match what the offense has been doing. But now it is diminished with the unfortunate loss of Aiden Hutchinson. I think Ty Chandler could have a pretty good week this week. And, the prospects are good for 15 plus touches for him.
Where do you have him ranked?
Running back 20.
20. Okay. Erickson, what do you think about that? I actually almost considered Chandler in the waiver wire segment of guys. You asked if we were going to start them this week. And then Fitz picked him for this section instead. So I just left him for here. But where do you have Chandler ranked, Erickson?
RB 26. I guess I'm trying to leaving out some hope that maybe Aaron Jones is playing, or again, it's probably more of a hedge ranking if once we get the official knowledge and information that Aaron Jones is going to play, which it seems that he's probably not going to play given that they just traded for Cam Akers, right? You don't trade for another running back if your starting running back is good to go. So again, Cam Akers, I don't know the minute that he doesn't become the RB1 on his team, he immediately gets thrown away from the Texans because Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce have just been bills of health throughout the last 2 seasons. So let's just trade away depth. But that's another story. Cam Akers, the saga continues with him. I think Chandler's a strong play. Again, this Vikings offense has been really efficient with Sam Darnold. Yes, the Lions have been a better defense against the run overall, but yeah, they lost their best player on defense with Hutchinson. So yes, he's more involved as a pass rusher than a run defender, but I just think that you're going to see the Lions defense get exposed a little bit more, and the Vikings are at home. They have a massive implied team total. It's a process play, right? Play running backs that playing good offenses at home with leads, and Ty Chandler kind of checks off all those boxes, and he was good in the small sample size we had last year of him as a starter when he took over for Mattison. So again, also don't think Akers is a big threat to his workload per se. I think that he's just really filling a backup role so they don't have to trot out guys like Myles Gaskin or give the ball to, CJ Ham. They can only give the guy so many touches near the end zone.
Erickson, who's your plant your flag player this week?
I'm going back to a guy I would like trading for during the trade show. It's McConkey for the Los Angeles Chargers. Looking at the matchup here against Arizona Cardinals, 4th most fantasy points per game allowed to slot wide receivers, the 8th highest percentage to slot wide receivers in the NFL. Look, when the Chargers drop back to throw, this is who I think they're going. This is where the ball is going to. It's going to McConkey. 8 targets last week, 4 for 43, 26% target share. He had almost 100 air yards. I think that last week the usage was all there for him, but it didn't really convert into a ton of fantasy production. But like I said, 100 air yards, so he's being used down the field a little bit more. And he was targeted twice inside the 10-yard line. Just kind of fell short of a couple touchdown scores. So we saw him score earlier this season. He led the team in routes run despite having a head injury during the game. His health is all fine. So I love him. 27% target share this season, which is top 12 on the year among all wide receivers. Again, if Arizona can push the Chargers in any way, which remains to be seen, because Arizona is very up and down on offense. But if they can and force the Chargers maybe to throw a little bit more, I think McConkey is going to be the number one benefactor. And even if it's a more conservative game plan, I still think McConkey provides a really nice floor given how he is the target leader in this offense and given the matchup.
Fitz Ladd is at wide receiver 29 in ECR. Is that too high, too low, or just right for you?
I'm a little behind consensus. I've got him in like wide receiver 35, but I think I need to move him up. Erickson has done a nice sales job here on Ladd, and my only wish is that the Chargers threw more. They just don't throw a lot, and obviously like that's kind of the concern. It clips his volume, but like Ladd has kind of been everything he was billed as coming out of college. So I like, despite being below consensus with my ranking, I would still consider myself kind of a Ladd optimist, and I'm starting him myself in a couple of leagues this week.
The roller coaster of an NFL season is moving right along, and it promises to be a month full of tricks, treats, and of course, touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is the number one place to bet touchdowns, running it in from the 1 or an 80-yard bomb. We don't care how they score touchdowns. We just want to bet on them. DraftKings heard us, and they're delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like a player to score a touchdown. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. The Sunday slate in Week 7 looks awesome. We've got Chiefs 49ers in the late window, of course. San Francisco's laying up 1.5 points at home. The early window looks even better with an epic NFC North battle between Detroit and Minnesota. The Vikings are laying 2.5 points. Also, Texans Packers. Jordan Love is laying 2.5 points against CJ Stroud. Those lines and odds are subject to change, but wherever they land, this slate looks incredible and it looks full of touchdowns. Here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance of their own. Bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, guys, let's get into some player debates here. The first one amongst the running backs, Kareem Hunt. Again, the Chiefs coming off that bye. Got a lot of usage back in Week 5, though, versus James Conner. These guys are pretty close in our consensus rankings. Fitz, I'll start with you. Kareem Hunt or James Conner? Who do you prefer?
Hunt. He has played 2 games with the Chiefs and already has 41 carries, 102 rushing yards and a touchdown last week against the Saints. Hunt is the lead guy in the Kansas City backfield. I don't think that changes when Clyde Edwards-Helaire returns. And remember when we used to be terrified of the 49ers as a matchup for our running backs? I think that era is over. No matter what metric you want to look at, DVOA, fantasy points allowed, the 49ers run defense is pretty average. Middle linebacker Fred Warner is still a stud, but the rest of that defensive front 7 against the run, meh. So, I'm happy to fire up Kareem Hunt. I don't know what's up with James Conner. Like, I know he's apparently dealing with some sort of ankle injury, but against the Packers last week, they had Trey Benson start off in the second half. He ripped off a 20-yard run on their first drive of the third quarter. They wound up kicking a field goal. Then James Conner comes out for the next series, promptly loses a fumble, and I don't think he played again the rest of the game. So, plus it's a tough matchup for the Cardinals against the Chargers this week, who have allowed the 4th fewest fantasy points to running backs. I feel much better about Kareem Hunt.
And obviously we're talking specifically about Week 7 mostly on this show, but just out of curiosity with Kareem Hunt, where do you have him rest of season, Fitz?
I believe I have him in the sort of mid-range running back 2 territory. Yeah, running back 20.
And obviously that's until such time as Pacheco is back. But yeah, for the time being, the usage is pretty nice.
Yeah, and I'm not counting on Pacheco being back much before like the end of the fantasy regular season.
Mm-hmm. Erickson, what do you think? Kareem Hunt, he's running back 17 in ECR. James Conner is running back 19, so very close to each other. Who do you prefer?
Yeah, I was really struggling with this one because I felt like they were in a similar tier. I had Conner ranked ahead of Kareem Hunt just because, you know, he's always been the bell cow. I'm not super concerned about what happened last week. It was a weird game. They were down 24-0. James Conner, again, kind of game scripted out, in my opinion, kind of rewatching that game. So I don't think that, it's going to be a full-blown committee. But I do feel more encouraged about Fitz's stance and confidence about Kareem Hunt getting the same level of workload, which I wasn't really sure how I felt about it, but why not just ride Kareem Hunt, right? I mean, they're going to get other running backs going anyway, so they got this guy off the couch. Let's just use him, and he was good. Again, the Saints' run defense is
horrible. So maybe that kind of attributed to how effective he was able to be. But the Chiefs have been able to be really successful running the football, even if it's really hasn't cared who has it been. Carson Steele's been effective. Kareem Hunt's been effective, at least from a success rate standpoint. So, I think right now, if you have Kareem Hunt, you just got to keep using him, right? There's nothing about what we saw from week 5 that suggests, hey, you shouldn't play Kareem Hunt this week. It's all, hey, you should play Kareem Hunt this week. And the matchup definitely is better. The Chargers have been one of the better defenses against the run this year, and the 49ers, like Fitz astutely pointed out, have not been. So I'm going to move Hunt up in my rankings.
Let's look at another running back debate. Bucky Irving versus Tyrone Tracy Jr. Erickson, the way you've been talking about Tracy the last couple of weeks, I'm assuming, I'm not actually looking at your rankings right now, so I could be wrong, but I'm assuming you have Tracy higher because you've been all over him.
Yeah, man, just keep starting him. He's the best running back on the Giants, and I don't think it's even close. I think that the Devin Singletary allegiance that we're sticking ourselves to with Brian Daboll, yes, Singletary is Brian Daboll's guy until he finds somebody better. And he found somebody better, and his name is Tyrone Tracy. So I think that both guys are kind of in a committee, even if Singletary returns. I think Sean Tucker's going to have a real role, even if there is no Rachaad White this week. So we don't know because they're playing on Monday, so we haven't gotten the most up-to-date training or practice reports with the Buccaneers backfield. But I do think that for this matchup here, I like Tyrone Tracy. I like the matchup more against the Eagles. I mean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing the Baltimore Ravens. They have the number 1 run defense in the NFL. So as great as it was to see the Buccaneers running all over the Saints, I don't know if we're going to see that exact game script here against the Baltimore Ravens. So I'm going to go with Tyrone Tracy.
Bucky Irving, he is RB24 in ECR. Tyrone Tracy is RB26 in ECR. Again, these are half PPR rankings. Fitz, do you have it that way, or do you see a wider gap? Do you see it flipped? How do you approach this?
All right, so this is a really hard week as far as the rankings because of all the injuries and all the shifting balances of power in some of these backfields. And these are two of the backfields where, not only do we have injuries going on with Rachaad White and Devin Singletary, but we do have sort of a shifting balance of power. So right now I'm treating it as if Rachaad White isn't going to play and Devin Singletary is. So I do have Bucky Irving ahead of Tyrone Tracy right now. I've got Singletary, RB28, Tyrone Tracy, RB30, and I've got Bucky Irving, RB19. I think he's still pretty well ahead of Sean Tucker in the Tampa Bay backfield. And Irving looked fantastic last week, I thought. I mean, that 31-yard run he had where he started left, broke a couple of tackles, stiff-armed a guy to the ground, then cut it back all the way across the field and wound up going out of bounds on the right sideline after starting as like a run wide left. Like, that was the best run of the week, I thought. And I think both guys have looked fantastic. I don't think either of these guys are going to be viewed by their teams as backups going forward. But right now, I think the usage outlook looks a little bit better for Bucky this week, just because I think Singletary is a better shot to play than White does.
I think you laid out a pretty good case for Bucky, like in a vacuum. You didn't mention the Ravens defense that they're going against. Might be the best run defense in football. I'm looking now, because I don't remember. I don't think, has a running back even broken 50 rushing yards against them? I mean, they've given
up 3 rushes of 10 yards this year. 3.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm looking here. I have one game. All right. That no running back has gotten even 50 yards against them, and most of them are under 40. A couple of them have gotten, like 45-ish. But I would be really nervous. I do agree Bucky Irving looked good. And I think, again, you make a good case for the usage, but I'm surprised here you have him inside the top 20 given the defense they're going against.
Well, he's got run catch versatility, Worm. I mean, that was kind of Bucky's calling card coming out of Oregon. He was good in the passing game. So that's like, he's got multiple outs, to use a poker term. There's more than one pathway to success for Bucky in fantasy. And still, I've got him RB20. It's not like I'm ranking him as in RB1.
That's fair. And if a running back is going to produce against the Ravens, I do think that's the way they'll do it, is through the air. I think they can be had there a little more than they can be, in just terms of just lining up and purely running the ball. So that's a good point. And I do expect that to be a pretty high scoring game too. So I think there will be lots of opportunities for scores in that Monday night game. Let's go to a wide receiver debate here. And this is going to include a player that you already talked about, Erickson, Lad McConkey. How about him versus Amari Cooper, who now has a new home in Buffalo? Seems very likely that he'll be kind of the number 1 target there. Don't know if that'll happen right away in week 7 here. Given that you're kind of planting your flag on Lad, do you have him ahead of Amari Cooper this week?
Yeah, I do. I think Amari, I think I mentioned this on an earlier show. I don't think that the consistency is going to necessarily change. I think it's going to be more of the same from him, where he's going to have massive weeks with Josh Allen, and he's going to have weeks where he does nothing, because this is an offense that wants to run the football. And Amari Cooper's never played with Josh Allen before, so it's a brand new chemistry. I am skeptical that we're going to see it here in week 1, or the first week that they're playing together against a pretty stout Titans defense that's been really good against the run and pass. So projecting this to be the blow up spot for Amari Cooper in his first game with Josh Allen, I think is a little aggressive. So I'm cool with just like watching and seeing how they use Cooper in his first game with the Buffalo Bills. I still think there's an upside play, so that's why he's in the wide receiver 3 range for me this week. But I mean, he could go out and play half the snaps and catch 2 passes for 17 yards. And then I know Ladd's floor is way higher than that. So I'll just take the floor with Ladd in a good matchup versus Cooper.
I tend to want to avoid the guy who was traded midweek, first game, early in the week, but still, like he's been there less than a week, first game with the new team. Like that does seem ripe for disappointment, even if it seems like long term he'll slot in pretty well in that offense. Fitz, who do you like between Amari and Ladd?
Yeah, I wish we had some sort of indicator of how Amari Cooper might do in his first game with a new team after getting traded at midseason. Oh, wait, we do, because it happened before. In 2018, Amari Cooper was traded from the Raiders to the Cowboys. Oh, and by the way, that trade, like this one, also happened in week 7. And Cooper went out and played 85% of the snaps for the Cowboys in his first game with them, drew 8 targets, 5 catches for 58 yards and a touchdown. Not saying he's going to repeat that, but I think he's going to be involved, like right off the bat. And I know the Titans have been a tough matchup. They have a good group of cornerbacks for sure, but where's the target competition coming from here? Yeah, like Dalton Kincaid, maybe Khalil Shakir comes back, but like I think Coop is going to pretty quickly establish himself as the number 1 target for Josh Allen, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I'm not dissing McConkey. Erickson did a nice sales job on him. He has been a steady wide receiver 3 type, but Justin Herbert is averaging 25 pass attempts per game. Like Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman pretty much hate the forward pass. They want to take the ball out, or take the air out of the ball like a New England Patriots ball boy. So I'll take Cooper here.
Erickson, where do you have Cooper rest of the season?
He's in my top 30 receiver. I just think that it's going to be boom or bust with him every single week. This is always what has been his MO. Whether he was on the Cowboys, whether he was on the Raiders, it doesn't matter what team he's on. He has games where he just disappears, and then his games where he puts up 40 points. So it depends on how you can stomach that. And when I was talking about when you drafted Amari Cooper this year, people will get frustrated because, oh, he sucked this week. Oh, no, he was great this week. It's a roller coaster. And I just think that, yes, I think the highs might be even higher with Josh Allen, but again, in Buffalo, in the cold, Amari Cooper, are we expecting him to have monster games in bad weather? Not in domes. I can see the 0 games coming for him, but then I got to bench him and then he goes off for 40 points the next week. So I think that he has probably I don't think he's going to be wide receiver 1, but I think that he's in that back end wide receiver 2 range, maybe inside the top 20. But I don't, again, we talked about Cooper all off season where he always finds a way to finish as a top 24 guy. And he's finagled his way to a new team where he's going to have a better chance of being that guy than staying on the Cleveland Browns. So I just think it's going to be a bumpy ride, but when you look up, I think you're going to be happy that you have him on your team based on where you drafted him.
By the way, you said you thought you had brought it up on an earlier show. I think we discussed it on our TikTok Tuesday.
Okay, there we go.
So I wanted to give the
so the podcast feed hasn't heard it yet.
Exactly, unless I'm misremembering. So the other wide receiver debate that I want to dive into is the other wide receiver who was traded early in the week, and that's Davante Adams. And I just said that I tend to not be that interested in players, at least not interested in ranking aggressively players who swap teams in the middle of the week. Having said that, Davante Adams, obviously, like, I think he's going to look pretty healthy. I think everybody's kind of made the same jokes about how all of a sudden he's healthy now that he's, where he wants to be with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. And also he knows Aaron Rodgers pretty darn well. I have no doubt that if he's on the field, he's going to get usage here. So having said that, he still is an older wide receiver who has been dealing nominally with an injury and is now changing teams and is on a slower paced offense now, even if it's one that he knows really well. So Fitz, Davante Adams versus George Pickens this week. Who do you like better for week 7?
Gosh.
And by the way, Pickens, just to set it up, there's a chance that Russell Wilson is his quarterback. So maybe some change coming on the Pickens side as well. It's kind of unclear based on some of the reporting and then some of the comments from Mike Tomlin, what exactly that's going to look like. But two guys in possibly unique situations now compared to earlier in the year.
And going against each other in the same game. So really interesting setup. Yeah, this one is hard. It's close to a coin flip for me. I'll go with Pickens. Like I want to believe that Russell Wilson might be better for Pickens than Justin Fields was, although that's really kind of a hunch and not based on anything concrete. Pickens matchup against the Jets, obviously not a good one, but here's the thing. Like I don't know. Obviously, the cynics in our audience are going to doubt the veracity of that hamstring injury that Davante Adams had. But like if there's any truth to it, and he actually had an issue, and he's making his return appearance with a new team, you have to wonder if he is going to play a full complement of snaps. Obviously, Worm, as you mentioned, he and Aaron Rodgers are pretty familiar with each other. It's not going to take a lot of ramp up time for him to learn the ins and outs of this offense with Nathaniel Hackett calling the play. Well, not calling the plays anymore, but designing the offense and Aaron Rodgers running it. So it's Pickens. It's close. I don't feel great about either guy this week. They're both kind of wide receiver 3s for me. Can I ask you guys one thing? Who do you think is going to be the more valuable fantasy asset going forward for the Jets? Will it be Garrett Wilson or Davante Adams?
I want it to be Garrett Wilson, but given everything we've seen, it's so difficult to
it's going to be
not
Davante
the guy
Adams.
that Rodgers knows.
It's Davante Adams today, tomorrow, rest of season. It's Davante Adams in this match. I like Davante. Again, I don't mean to change the subject, but I would play Davante Adams in this matchup. I am not concerned about this hamstring. This is a Fugazi hamstring injury because he didn't want to play. He wanted to get traded. Rodgers is going to target him 15 times. I immediately, we're going to see on the first drive, Adams is going to be peppered with targets. We've seen Rodgers has a vendetta. When they weren't targeting Garrett Wilson enough, what did he do? He went out and targeted Garrett Wilson 22 times in a game. And he's going to do, again, I'm not saying he's going to get 20 targets in this particular matchup, but first drive, first play, where do you think the ball is going? It's going to Davante Adams, and it's going to happen a lot, especially in the red zone. So I think that this is easy for Adams. It's Sunday Night Football. Everybody's watching. Rodgers got his guy back. Look, we saw this with players reunited with certain players that they played with in the past. It reminds me a lot of Tom Brady when he would do anything to get Antonio Brown on his team, right? And no practices. And what happens when you put these guys back together? They immediately just go back to their guy just because the chemistry is there. So I'm not. If I've held on to Davante Adams this long, I'm playing him on my team, and I don't think the matchup is so awful that you can't play him in this spot. So I'm going to play Davante.
I think ultimately it will be Davante Adams over Garrett Wilson long term fits for this season. However, I do think we talked about this a bit on the Tuesday show. I do think it's an interesting trade, kind of, I don't want to call it a buy low opportunity on Garrett Wilson because he's played well the last 2 weeks, but like I think the perceived value from most fantasy players is that his value is going to drop more than I think it will. Like I think Garrett Wilson will still be a very valuable fantasy wide receiver to have on your roster. So I am trying to trade for him for people who are kind of panicking and saying, oh, this is just going to be the Davante Adams and Allen Lazard show now. And Garrett Wilson's value is totally nuked. I don't think that's the case. I do think of the two, you kind of have to lean towards Davante Adams. The other thing for this week in particular, like I would probably be pretty surprised if Davante Adams finishes with, 12 targets. I would be pretty surprised if he finishes with 100 yards. I will not be surprised at all if he finishes with a touchdown. Like, I think that is the most likely place that he will make an immediate impact right off the bat, where Aaron Rodgers knows him. He trusts him in the red zone. If they get in close, like if Davante Adams is limited at all in playing in this first week, which again, I'm not even sure he will be, but if he is, I think the place that they utilize him will be near the end zone. So I would like love a anytime touchdown bet on Davante Adams. Like I think that will be where he will, kind of make his hay in week 7. And I don't trust George Pickens to score any touch. I don't trust the Steelers to score any touchdowns if Russell Wilson is their quarterback. I think it's going to be a disaster behind that offensive line. So for me, like as much as I tend to prefer the already established guy, just given the question marks on the Steelers side, with Pickens and that offense in general, I would go Davante Adams here.
You guys talked me into Adams on this one, I think.
Yeah, dude. Rodgers going to target his guy no matter what.
And now I want to put a first touchdown bet on Adams too. Now that Erickson is that Erickson is
got the wheel spinning in that marketplace.
You're in the wrong career, Erickson. You should be in sales, man.
Well, I do have a marketing degree, so.
No wonder. Well, speaking of anytime touchdown bets, we've got a special offer for you all. Unlock a month of Betting Pros Premium for free. Download the Betting Pros app today. Use promo code FPFREE. That's code FPFREE. Get access to tools like the Same Game Parlay tool, the Prop Bet Analyzer, and the Prize Picks Prop Bet Cheat Sheet. Don't miss out. Try it for free for 1 month now. Only available on iOS. Again, that's Betting Pros Premium, and the promo code is FPFREE. I wonder what Davante Adams' first touchdown score odds are. I might look that up.
Plus, I would guess probably plus 600, plus 650,
plus 800.
Oh, it's plus 800.
No, I don't know. I'm guessing
it might be plus 800, but
pulling up for me here. Let's see. It's not actually listing anything. Well, it's so refreshing. I'll see if I can get that pulled up. All right, let's go to some more rapid fire start sit decisions here. Let's do another running back. Tank Bigsby versus Austin Ekeler. Erickson, who do you like better between Bigsby and Ekeler in week 7?
I think Bigsby has the highest ceiling if there's no Travis Etienne. I mean, the Patriots gave up big yardage last week to Dameon Pierce and Joe Mixon, but Eckler's matchup against the Panthers is also so amazing, and they just get destroyed by every single running back that they play. I think Ekeler has a higher floor, no doubt. But I think if you really need a top 5 finish, I think I would probably roll with Bigsby.
What do you think, Fitz?
Real good assessment by Erickson there. I'm going to give a reluctant endorsement to Tank Bigsby here just because, again, another case where the injuries kind of leave things in a state of flux. But I think I'm ranking these guys as if Etienne is out for the Jaguars and Brian Robinson Jr. plays for the Commanders. So that sort of leads me to Bigsby. But it was not reassuring that Dearness Johnson played more than twice as many snaps than Tank Bigsby last week in that blowout loss to the Bears. And obviously the game script had something to do with it. But like if this Jaguars team falls behind by multiple scores, Tank Bigsby can be game scripted out. Now that probably doesn't happen against the Patriots, but who knows? The Jaguars are terrible. So that's my concern here. Very reluctant shot on Bigsby, and I think Erickson has a right that it's more of a boom bust profile for Erickson or for Bigsby and a safer floor for Ekeler.
Let's look at another wide receiver debate here. Josh Downs versus a guy we already talked about a bit, JuJu Smith-Schuster. Fitz, I'll start with you this time.
JuJu, I mentioned before why I find him appealing. Josh Downs, it looks as if it's going to be Anthony Richardson at quarterback for the Colts, and I'm an Anthony Richardson proponent, but there's no denying that the outlook for the Colts pass catchers is worse with Richardson than it is with Joe Flacco. Passing volume is going to decrease. Passing efficiency is going to decrease. And hey, as good as things have been for Downs with Flacco the last 2 weeks, 21 targets, 16 catches over that span, still didn't hit 70 yards in either of those games, and he's averaging 8.4 yards per catch with Flacco. So, Downs is just kind of a possession guy, and I don't want a possession receiver tied to Anthony Richardson.
What do you think, Erickson?
I think that Fitz had me convinced with JuJu, at least in this particular case, to go over Josh Downs because the Richardson thing matters. So even if you have Downs being hyper-targeted in an offense that is now getting inaccurate passes, there are just so many more, again, bring back the poker term, there are more outs with JuJu Smith-Schuster because Patrick Mahomes is his quarterback versus Anthony Richardson. So I have a slight lean towards JuJu here as well.
All right, let's do some flex debates here. Najee Harris versus Tyreek Hill, which is a really kind of a weird one to even be asking. But, we're coming off the bye for the Dolphins. Obviously, it has been very, very bad without Tua, running the offense as quarterback. He's still Tyreek Hill, though. And Najee Harris hasn't exactly, set the world on fire. Now they might be dealing with a quarterback change of their own. So, Fitz, I'll start with you here. Najee Harris or Tyreek Hill this week?
I'm taking the great player over the not great player. And I know how bad it's been for the Miami offense, but maybe the bye week helped get Tyler Huntley acclimated to the Miami offense. Also, like, after initially looking doubtful to play last week, Jaylen Warren did play, and he only played 6 fewer snaps than Najee. So Najee no longer has this backfield to himself. I'll take Tyreek Hill.
Erickson.
I can't bring myself to play Najee over Tyreek Hill. I don't even care who the quarterback is at this point. Just Najee. Again, the fact that he had his best game last week, despite playing his lowest snap share since week 2, just, is this sustainable? And I have in the back of my mind, I don't know why I was thinking this. I think this was my like shower thoughts, but I know that even if Russell Wilson starts this game, you think, oh, well, this means Najee should get more red zone opportunities, right? Well, what if they just keep Fields in red zone packages? That's a real thing that they could do in this particular matchup, given how bad the Jets have been against the run. So even if Fields doesn't start, that doesn't mean he's not going to play whatsoever because he's been so dynamic in the red zone. So yeah, I'm just going to play Tyreek Hill.
Where are you guys ranking Tyreek Hill? Just like, I mean, again, I know he's a great player. I know he's Tyreek Hill, but since week 2, his finishes at the position in half PPR scoring, wide receiver 54, wide receiver 58, wide receiver 55, wide receiver 36. He doesn't have a touchdown since week 1. Like almost half of his fantasy points on the season came in week 1. It's just not appealing in any way. And yet he's still Tyreek Hill. Fitz, where do you have him ranked?
I've got him wide receiver 19. Like it is weird that, Tyler Huntley, like, I have an arm like Linguini, and I feel like I have a chance to hit Tyreek Hill on a slant and let him run for 80 yards after it. Like, it's weird that has not happened yet since the Tua injury. So I feel like it's coming, man. And I feel like it's weird it hasn't happened already, that we haven't seen Tyreek Hill turn an easy completion into like some monstrously long touchdown.
Where do you have him ranked, Erickson?
I have him, I think, ranked pretty close to ECR 21. So right with ECR, because I'm just throwing my hands up in the air because I don't know what to expect, but I want to buy into the player and believe in Tyreek Hill as a talent. And I think that we did see growth with Tyler Huntley from his first start to his second start. Hill had opportunities against the Patriots in week 5 to deliver a big game. He had his most targets in that game as well. So Mike McDaniel, he's had 2 weeks in the lab to construct a game plan with Tyreek Hill against the Colts defense. Okay, this is not a good defense that they're going up against. In the dome, against Richardson, maybe this game, I kind of like the over in this game. I think they think could get wacky. So I'm rolling the dice with Tyreek Hill because I've seen Najee Harris run as a slug too many times to put him to start him over someone as dynamic as Tyreek Hill is as a player. And I'm willing to be wrong about it if that's how it plays out.
How about Jaxon Smith-Njigba versus Alexander Mattison, Erickson?
Alexander Mattison, it's crazy how productive he's able to be, but despite the fact that he's been almost in a timeshare most of the season with Zamir White. But the guy has a nose for the end zone. After basically being allergic to the end zone all of last year, it seems like Mattison can't stop scoring touchdowns. So the Falcons have been decent against slot receivers underneath pass catchers, which has kind of been JSN's role this year. So I don't love him specifically. I really like Metcalf against the Falcons. But I think for Mattison, especially if Zamir White misses again, I think I'll just roll with the running back.
What do you think, Fitz?
Yeah, Mattison, pretty sturdy touch floor. Like it's not exciting, even if he is the lead running back with Zamir White potentially out again. But like against a pretty sketchy Rams defense, like the Rams are just terrible on defense. Probably the worst defense in the league. JSN had 117 yards against the Patriots in week 2. In his other 5 games, he's averaged 38.6 yards. And he's sharing targets with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I'll take Mattison here.
Another flex debate, Zach Moss versus Jaylen Waddle. We just talked about Tyreek Hill with this Dolphins offense. Now let's ask about the other big name receiver for them, Jaylen Waddle. Erickson, you were very high on Jaylen Waddle throughout the draft process. It has not panned out very well. Do you like him over Zach Moss this week, though?
I do like Jaylen Waddle over Zach Moss. I think it's less about, I'm super high on Waddle because I don't think there's really a bullish case for that. But I think it's okay to be low on Zach Moss. We're seeing Chase Brown take a bigger share of this backfield. And I know both guys lost a fumble last week, so I don't think that we're going to see ramifications from a ball security issue because both guys fumbled against the Giants. But I don't like this spot for the Bengals offense. On the road against Cleveland, who showed up big last week, playing on the road against a pretty dynamic Eagles run game. Maybe they shut down Saquon Barkley. So I'm not excited to play this Bengals backfield. So again, buying into Mike McDaniel crafting an offensive game plan against this really bad Colts defense. Jaylen Waddle can get it done in one play. I don't think Zach Moss can. So I will roll the dice with Jaylen Waddle because I think Zach Moss is just, I mean, he's trending in the wrong direction the last couple of weeks where Chase Brown is trending up.
Fitz, who do you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that Moss seems to be in the process of being usurped by Chase Brown. The usurping is underway in Cincinnati, but Moss is still in the mix, and I think he gives you a better chance of a touchdown than you get with Jaylen Waddle, who hasn't had a touchdown this year and hasn't had a 50-yard game since week 1 when it was Tua Tagovailoa still at quarterback for the Dolphins. So I'm a reluctant vote for Zach Moss.
Very reluctant. I can feel.
Well, I mean, he's chairman of the Chase Brown fan club.
I know,
Of course he's going to
I
be
know.
reluctant to start Zach Moss.
One more flex decision here. Tyler Algier coming off a really good game, even as the backup to Bijan versus Christian Watson, who did get a touchdown in his return. Fitz, will start with you on this one. Algier versus Watson.
Watson. So the Falcons were sitting on a lead late last week against the Panthers, and I was interested in the Tyler Algier rushing total because I had him over 37.5 yards, and I saw early in the fourth he was at 38. I wasn't really watching any of that game. I checked back a little later, and he was at 105. They just let him salt away the game against the Panthers and their horrible run defense. Algier wound up with 18 carries. He hasn't had double-digit carries in any other game this year. Like 9 was his previous high for rushing attempts. We know Watson has a boom-bust profile, but the boom appeal is so strong for a 6'4" receiver who runs like a gazelle and is tied to Jordan Love. And Watson has been a really prolific touchdown scorer. 14 career touchdowns in 28 games. I'll take Watson over Algier.
Erickson, who do you prefer? And Watson he's 72nd in our flex rankings in ECR. Algier's at 83rd. So there is a little bit of a gap there.
I like Watson too. I usually just like chasing the ceiling with some of these receivers. I think Algier, last week was the week to play Algier because he was facing the Carolina Panthers. I don't think we're going to see, I think that was basically his best case scenario, right? When he is still splitting snaps with a Bijan Robinson. If he goes back to 6 carries and if he doesn't score a touchdown, then you're probably going to be disappointed. Whereas, hey, Christian Watson gets 6 targets. We don't know if he'll score a touchdown or not, but I think I like those odds more shooting for the ceiling with Watson in a game that could shoot out. Again, they're playing the Houston Texans, so that's an offense that can score points. So I like Christian Watson as well.
Let's look at a quarterback debate. As usual, I try to pick a debate that I think actually could be facing managers, not just 2 guys who are ranked near each other, because quarterback, you often wouldn't have both of those guys on the same roster. I think it's very reasonable that somebody might have Kyler Murray as their starter and Sam Darnold as somebody that was drafted to be their backup, and now they have to make that decision this week given the way those 2 guys have played. Darnold obviously coming off the bye. You already mentioned the defense is going to look a lot different for Detroit. Fitz, so does that mean that you would lean Darnold in this one, or would you still go with Kyler?
I have Kyler ranked QB 10 and Darnold QB 11, and I think this is basically a coin flip. Kyler has more of a boom-bust profile, which sounds strange to say that Darnold is like the steadier guy, but so I would play Kyler, but I might pivot to Darnold if I were favored in my matchup and wanted more of a safety play.
Erickson, Sam Darnold, or Kyler Murray?
Well, I'm just checking to make sure when this Call of Duty release date is for my proponents of starting Kyler. I know it's coming soon, but jokes aside, I mean, Kyler's been tough to peg, right? Because in games where he just decides not to run, he's not good. And you also, does he have Marvin Harrison Jr. in this matchup? That's another question mark. So that's what concerns me about Kyler. I'm actually in this exact situation where I think I'm willing to miss out on a Kyler Murray 25, 30-point game because I don't want to risk him scoring 10 points. And I know Sam Darnold's going to bank at least 10 or 15 points because he's playing the Lions. He has all these weapons. They don't have a pass rush. He's playing at home. So for me, I'm going to lean towards Darnold. But this is something that you just need to realize when it comes to some of these mobile quarterbacks that, yes, the ceiling is so great when they do run for 60 yards. But in the certain matchups where they just don't run, which just is going to happen from time to time. I mean, Kyler's 2 top 5 finishes this year. But he also has ones that are outside the top 20. So those kill you. I think Darnold is probably just the safer start, which again, sounds weird to say that he's like the more consistent guy, but just based on the matchup, the weapons he has coming off a bye week, I think that he's just the safer play.
Let's do a tight end here. Our long national nightmare is over. Mark Andrews has a touchdown this year. It was great to see it, 60 yards or something like that as well in that week 6 game against the Commanders. So Mark Andrews, are we jumping right back on the train, or David Njoku, who now maybe there's some more opportunity here with Amari Cooper gone. Still not a very good offense. So Mark Andrews or David Njoku. Erickson, who do you prefer?
I'm just going to go with Njoku just because I think that his role is better. He sees more targets. He runs more routes. Mark Andrews is a benefit of playing on a really high-powered offense. So he scored the touchdown last week. It was great, but he's still running less routes than Isaiah Likely. He's still seeing fewer targets than Zay Flowers, than Rashad Bateman, than Isaiah Likely. So that's the concern with Andrews that, yeah, he scored last week. That was great. Tight ends score touchdowns all the time, and they just do nothing the next week. So I'm going to roll with Njoku because I think his week 7 projection looks so much better, especially with Cooper out of the fold.
Fitz, what do you think here? I mean, for me, I will say, like with Andrews, it's one of those things where it's like, I think the first, several weeks of the season were so bad that I need to see it more than once. Having said that, he has been good for so long prior to this year that part of me wants to say, all right, we saw it once and now just kind of full steam ahead. I don't think I can totally get there. It's more like head versus heart with that kind of debate for me. Who do you prefer, Andrews or Njoku?
Yeah, and it's funny to see him back as I think his ECR is tight end 10. Like people are kind of putting Andrews back in the circle of trust. I'm not there yet. I mean, he only played 50% of the offensive snaps last week, but at least he is in a good offense. Like he is in a high-powered offense. The Browns offense is just sludge right now. They've been held under 250 yards of total offense in all but one of their games this season, and they've not yet scored 20 points in a game. Only team in the NFL that hasn't hit 20 points. So, and like we've never seen David Njoku and Deshaun Watson click. Like last year when David Njoku was cooking, it was all with Joe Flacco. I'm going to take Mark Andrews. Just give me the guy in the vastly superior offense.
Say goodbye to start-sit dilemmas with FantasyPros Start-Sit Assistant. Within seconds, you'll know exactly who to play for optimal results each and every week. Leveraging insights from numerous experts, the Start-Sit Assistant aligns your lineup decisions with the top minds in fantasy football, giving you a competitive edge. Maximize your lineup's potential with just a few clicks. Head to fantasypros.com/myplaybook and make winning decisions in no time. Guys, we'll wrap up with the touchdown calls contest. Erickson, you are on running back this week. Fitz, you are on wide receiver, and I am on ugly tight end. Erickson, who's your running back?
Austin Ekeler. Panthers against RB2s. You're not even the starting running back they face. Jamal Williams, touchdown. Alexander Mattison, touchdown. Chase Brown, 2 touchdowns. Roshan Johnson, 2 touchdowns. And Tyler Algier, 1 touchdown last week. Those are the RB2s the Panthers have faced. So give me Austin Ekeler against Carolina.
Fitz, your wide receiver?
Packers-Texans is the funnest matchup of the week, and I think we're going to get offense. I expect to see 60 points in this game. It's going to be a shootout, and Tank Dell is going to score for the Texans.
At tight end, I'm going to go with Hunter Henry. Got in the end zone last week, with the change to Drake May. Rookie quarterbacks like to go to their tight ends. Not a ton of options there, even if you do like DeMario Douglas. So I'll go with Hunter Henry reluctantly, but all tight end picks are reluctant. So that's where we stand with that. We'll get out of here on that one. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Best of luck here in week 7 for Fitz and Erickson. I'm Ryan Wormeli. We'll see you again next time.